So here is a DIY medium-sized swirl filter I've been working on. You can use any container, this is just what we had. It is a 50-gallon plastic drum. I originally wanted to make a budget-conscious swirl filter using a 3-liter plastic bottle, but it just wouldn't work because the area inside the bottle was too small to let the fish waste settle on the bottom. You could probably get away with using a 5-gallon bucket, but since it's a harder plastic, it'll be more difficult to get a watertight seal for the drain. I've seen videos where people use 5-gallon water cooler jugs, but they seem to be more work. I've already drilled the hole for the drain and plugged the hole on the bottom, which I didn't film because I wasn't too sure if it would work and only decided to film once it seemed like it would work successfully. The way a swirl filter works is the water is pumped out of the fish tank and into a round or cylindrical tank at an angle towards the inside wall, causing the water to swirl around like a whirlpool, hence the name swirl filter. The swirl effect keeps the water moving in one direction, and over time the heavier fish particles sink to the bottom and the lighter clean water stays at the top, much like panning for gold. The heavier gold stays in the pan while the lighter sediment washes off the top. Meanwhile, there's a drain pipe turned upward so that it only catches the topmost surface water, which is the cleanest water, thus filtering the water and acting as a sort of aquatic septic tank, and will aid in lightening the load of water filtering off of your plants and red wigglers if you have any. This sort of filter is perfect if you find yourself needing to clean your fish tank, or if the amount of fish waste is too much for your plants and is killing them instead of nourishing. So in this swirl filter, I'll be putting a net inside to help catch the smaller particles that wouldn't settle to the bottom. I've seen a few videos of people using cloth, rags, or a mesh material in the swirl filter to help catch some of the free roaming particles, but every time I see it, it's just thrown carelessly in there. So I'll be using a net too, but I'll also be making a frame out of PVC for the net to stretch over, much like a canvas to a frame. The net I got cost me $1 from Dollar Tree. It's actually just a polyester laundry bag, but you could just as easily use an old t-shirt, which would also work great with the frame I'm making. And here is the frame. As you may or may not be able to see, the plastic drum I'm using isn't perfectly cylindrical, and it's actually more narrow on the bottom than it is on top. So knowing that, I adjusted the frame to fit inside by making the bottom piece smaller than the top to correspond with the shape of the inside of the drum, and it fits great. It's a very snug fit, but not too tight. The frame costs under $4. It's just 4 corner pieces and 1 long pipe cut to various lengths. And to prep the net, I'm just dropping the frame inside of the net, spinning it, and wrapping the excess around the frame to double up on the filter thickness. Then I'm just pulling the drawstring on the bag to keep it all taut. And that's what it'll look like once inside. So normally you'd want to drill 2 holes in your swirl filter. One for the intake and one for the out. The intake would work best at the bottom so that the waste has a harder time traveling upwards, and your out drain should be towards the top. And since it's the drain, the hole for it pretty much dictates how high your water will reach and how much water will be held in at all times. But I'll be doing things differently. Instead of drilling more holes than I need into this drum, I'll simply pull the pump over and into the swirl filter and down past the halfway point, utilizing the open top of this drum and saving me extra work making and waterproofing another hole. Then I'll add an elbow on the inside and point it towards the inner wall so it doesn't just point straight down, which will give it a swirl, and as the water rises, the heavier particles will sink to the bottom and the smaller particles will get trapped in the net and the cleaner water sits on top. Next come the connection. The pipes coming out of the pump are all made of 1/2-inch PVC, but I'm going to have it exit the swirl filter using 3/4-inch PVC. However, I'll be using adapters to use this 1.5-inch elbow so I can get as big of an opening for the drain as possible so that the water coming into the filter isn't greater than the water leaving. If I use something smaller, it might cause a bottleneck, which might cause the filter to overflow from the top. So basically, I'm going to have this 1.5-inch elbow on the inside to drain out into 3/4-inch tubing. So I'll start with this large elbow on the inside, followed by this reducing coupler that narrows it down from 1.5-inch to 1 inch, followed by another coupler, and this one is just for the female threading. It doesn't reduce the size like the last one. Next, I'll be adding this 1-inch adapter with male threading, and this will sit on the outside of the filter. So this will be on the outside, and this will be on the inside. And on this 1-inch male adapter, I've added a 3/4-inch coupler, which fits perfectly inside the 1-inch male adapter. And so the coupler is acting as a final reducer, and I used electrical PVC tubing because it's often cheaper and equally watertight. So the whole thing finally comes out into 3/4-inch PVC. And finally, I'll be adding 2 O-rings, one on the outside and one on the inside to make the connection watertight. So that's all the parts I'll be using to go from 1.5-inch to 3/4-inch. I'm sure there was a way I could do it with less pieces, but this was the cheapest, and all the adapters help place the opening of the drain closer to the center of the drum instead of hugging the wall, which is a bonus. And as you can see, I've already drilled a hole in this bucket. I used a 1-inch hole drilling bit, and I left it a little bit too small for what I need. So I had to grind it out using a Dremel with a sanding bit. And it's not perfectly round, but it's round enough and just the right size to fit the threading and still be watertight. Now for the assembly. So first, I'll take my outside adapter. This is the male end, and I'm going to insert the O-ring around the threading, like so. And then I'm going to screw this in. And you want it tight, but not too tight, because if you over tighten it, it'll actually squeeze the O-ring out from the sides, which leaves a big gap, defeating the purpose of the O-ring. Next, here's the inside piece. I'm just going to squeeze it all together to make it tight, and then screw it in on the inside. But first, I need to add the other O-ring on the threading, so I have a watertight seal on the inside as well as the outside. Then just screw it in. And obviously, you want this end up, with the opening pointing straight up. Again, being careful not to over tighten the O-ring. Then take the net, should you decide to make one, which I highly suggest you do, and slide it into place. And it basically splits the drum into half, hopefully keeping the finer particles on one side and the filtered water on the inside by the drain. Also, I got this drain strainer from Dollar Tree, which I'm going to put here just over the drain opening, just as a last line of defense for large particles. So here's what it'll look like once it's all done. As you can see, I've moved the pump over to the right, and then I added a few elbows to keep the drain low, because I planned to add some custom lighting and it was in the way. So on the inside, I've placed the net here in the center, and the pump is in towards the bottom, and the intake line is at the bottom, pumping the water in towards the wall. So I actually just cleaned it out, and it had months of gunk, probably like 6 months worth of sludge. So I took it out and cleaned the net and the strainer, and gave the whole thing a good rinse. And you can clean the net once a month, but you can go many months before you have to remove all the collected waste from the bottom of the filter. I would say every 6 months, depending on the size and quantity of fish. And that's it. It took many months to finish this video, as you can see from the tree outside suddenly having leaves, but here you go. I hope you find this helpful, and thank you for watching.